Welcome to the Wellness Hub for you. This is a new podcast featuring insightful conversations with guests from different industries, sharing wellness strategies, best practices, tools, and techniques. And today is our inaugural issue. Today we are welcoming one of our first guests. It's Dr. Anthony Chow. He is the director of the San Jose State University School of Information. And to kick things off, could you share a bit about your background and how your role at San Jose State University School of Information has shaped your perspective on wellness?
Sure. Thank you, Loida. It's a real honor and privilege to be part of this new podcast. And I have to say, first of all, that I was thinking to myself, I'm not sure if I'm the best role model for health and wellness, but I'll definitely give it my best shot. As the director of the School of Information at San Jose State, we have the privilege of being the largest MLS program and also most diverse. And that is important because part of my job is to go around the country to meet our students and alumni. And it really gives me a diverse perspective on, what the challenges of the field are. And so what I hear a lot is the anxiety, the tension that continues to increase in our world. And so it weighs heavily on me as a director, because ultimately, as the largest MLS program and most diverse, we have a responsibility to tackle these questions, which is why it's a real privilege, Lloyd, to be part of this conversation, because ultimately, in many ways, our students are relying on us to help give them some of those answers. So I think being the director here really helps, has informed my or reaffirmed how important this is, because I'm hearing it from so many people from all across the country.
This is something important that you mentioned. You mentioned people across the country, and we are working every day with people from different industries. And there is a model, I will say an outdated model, that the more you work, the less breaks you took, the more busy you look. It was the best professional kind of outlook. But there are many research done in recent times where it's evident that taking breaks, pausing, it's important, right? Kind of brings clarity of mind that we need to be able to decide on things and, what is the best course of action for different aspects that we deal in every day. And so I wanted to ask you about that. We are living in high-speed world. And why would you think that is crucial for leaders and teams to make time for breaks and pause, recharge, reflect, especially in environments where constant multitasking is the norm?
Yeah, I think, as you said, the thinking around this has evolved. I believe it really focuses on quality over quantity now. I remember a former dean at UNC Greensboro really told me that he, I believe, had as diabetes, that ultimately he built in 1 hours of exercise during his as part of his workday, right? That he sees it as his workday. He did that. He doesn't feel guilty going to the gym during his workday, because it really, taking care of himself was very important. And more importantly, not only was he in good shape, but rightfully so, and supported by science, that exercise, that stress release really allows you to be happier, more productive, and healthier, in the other hours during the workday. So I think that ultimately, for all of us, the thinking on this has changed before, and I think even now we still feel a little bit of guilt, but to take a little time for ourselves. But I think in a good way, the thinking on this has changed. I think the post-pandemic, high-tech, AI-generated world has just accelerated the fact that we must, like you said, take pauses. And to your point about leadership, we must support an environment like that where we reinforce it, that we don't overwork people to the point where they're not allowed to take those breaks. And I think, as you said, we must role model and be very explicit that that it's not only okay, we want you to take those pauses, because the bottom line is we are realizing, hopefully getting a little smarter, that quality is much better than quantity in the end.
And if we are recharged, I will think right, the workforce, wherever you are across industries, uh, you will be in a better place to give, right? To give your time or your clarity of mind, service also if you're working with patrons or customers. And so I know you touched on some of these, but do you have specific kind of practical strategies, anything that you do at certain times to kind of like make sure I'm taking this break now?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, sometimes I may not be the best role model because first and foremost, I love what I do. And so I really enjoy solving problems. You had mentioned, prior to starting, my work with the Native American communities, I get a lot of happiness by helping other people through my work. So I guess my first one would be to really be sure that you're enjoying your work, that you are enjoying the impact of your work. Because there's a saying that if you enjoy your work, right, you won't work a day in your life, right? And I think there's something to be said about that, where I'm putting a lot of time in, but it's a lot of fun, Loida, because I really feel like I'm helping people. But in a more traditional sense, you know, we've got to take a little time to just have a mental break, right? Whether it be a walk or a cup of coffee or tea, where then there's actually a lot of research again on this, where the subconscious, the unconscious, really starts to work in the background to solve problems. But you have to free your mind or allow your mind some time to do that. And so I think that's why these breaks help not only mentally. There's a lot of, again, research that shows, oftentimes we'll wake up in the morning with solutions to problems we were thinking about because our mind has kind of worked through that
I
while we were
know.
asleep, right? And then probably the other one was exercise. So again, there's a lot of research to show that, in fact, walking is the one of the best exercises, in that our body actually releases endorphins, right? It actually releases endorphins that make us feel good, and I think that that's very healthy for us both mentally and physically.
You mentioned something important, two things actually. One, the kind of rewarding feeling when you are working for the greater good, so to speak, right? You mentioned you're working with some, I think, indigenous communities in these
Hmm.
different projects that you have, and
Hmm.
that is good for the actual brain and for our own well-being. And the
Hmm.
second piece is that sometimes people think they really need to take a couple of hours to do self-care. But you mentioned, a short walk. And this
Hmm.
has been proved. Sometimes people go to the water fountain
Hmm.
to drink water mid-afternoon. And sometimes if they only change that water fountain to the next one, maybe on the next floor or the other
Hmm.
side of the building, that's a
Hmm.
change of sort of like the scenery. And we perhaps are not very fully aware of that.
Hmm.
But our brain is aware, and all that helps. Of
Hmm.
course, these are, small steps. And I always say start small and then build on that, right? Because
Hmm.
then if we are too worried about how we're going to start and we never start, then that's the kind of like the problem. But I want to
Exactly.
mention something because you are in a very good position in terms of leading by example, even though you may be mentioned that, you're so busy. But there are still things that you can share with others and, either other leaders or other team members can hopefully, pull some information for the benefit. So what role do you think leadership plays in creating a wellness-centric culture in organizations, especially in industries like libraries, where people are often juggling multiple responsibilities?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, the leader um, has a major impact on the emotions of the team and everyone. I believe one of the roles of a leader must be positivity and assertive kindness, right? So not to say that you can't ask your staff to do certain things and to not be assertive, but we set the emotional tone, right? So if we're stressed out or we're angry, again, there's research that shows that's contagious, right? And the leader has that recognized influence on everyone else. And also, the researchers showed that those same emotions are contagious, even if you're not the leader, right? So, part of, I think, again, being someone that supports well-being is to always be looking to make sure that your staff is not in distress, right? The bottom line is, as a leader, you're looking for staff that may be having challenges. And what we want to do is provide the right support and also to make sure we address that so that it doesn't start spreading across the team. So, yeah.
Right. It's kind of a two-way thing, right? If the leader is stressed out, then it kind of radiates. And so what I'm hearing here, it's very revealing. It's not really rocket science, but it's like everybody needs some type of wellness or well-being in their life, even if it's the leader, if it's a team member. And we can all start with small things and then build on that.
Yeah.
So when these teams, right, you work with different teams across different type of projects. When teams embrace wellness practices, how do you see these impacting long-term performances? You started to mention something about that, but there's also employee satisfaction and retention. So we are, getting a little bit deeper. How do you see that, based on your experiences?
Yeah, so I think as a strategic planner and as a strategic planning consultant, one of the most important aspects of a strategic plan are the organizational values, which then are the foundation of the culture of any team. So one of the things that I try to do is, again, be a role model in terms of being polite and being positive, but then also establishing that as a value, right? Which is that when I see rudeness or curtness or examples in which staff versus staff or students, etc., I always try to promote politeness. And so when I do see lack of politeness, I try to call people to remind people that we need to be polite because ultimately, again, when people start to bark at each other or really rude with each other, especially when it's an email, then it sets a tone where people, start to butt heads a lot, right? So I think that's certainly one of them. But I think also, Loida, going back to being a role model, it's important to surround yourself with things that make you happy, right? So it's one thing to say it, but I think clearly we all believe this too. It's not do as I say, but do as you do, right? And so I try to be happy, Lloyd, and I try to be
We
happy
have to
because
work at it, right? A little
we
bit
do.
sometimes,
Exactly.
but it's
Because in
part
the
of it.
end,
Yes.
yeah. Because in the end, people are not going to listen to you if it's clear you're not happy, yet you're trying to talk about happiness, right? So, yeah.
Yes, yes, indeed, indeed. Um, in just keeping this line of workers and what you mentioned, what are the top benefits that you've seen from organizations or teams that prioritize wellness and perhaps being kind, right? The politeness that you mentioned. And what have you seen that is perhaps part of their routine, right? Because some people think this is magical. Well, there is maybe an awesome sauce, right? There is a kind of like a recipe, some formula, some steps that people follow, but it's not really magic. We have to put some work on it.
Yeah, I would say here at the iSchool, one of our secret sauces for success is that we don't overtax any one person. So in our school, everybody has a discrete role of responsibility. And here's the important thing, Loida. Part of our job as leaders is fit too, right? So we want to put people in positions of strength where they're enjoying themselves and they're not overtaxed, right? So one of the worst things we can do as leaders is try to work our staff too hard, right? And we've all been there where pulling yourself by the bootstraps only works temporarily, but if that becomes a permanent state, you're going to burn out, right? So if we as leaders don't recognize that, then we are going to actually, Lloyd, to create an environment of unhealthiness where we are putting our staff in positions of failure or to fail. And so I think certainly one of the ways to, in a way, be systematic about supporting health and wellness is to put our staff in positions to be successful. And I will say some of the outcomes of that, and not to say everyone's always happy, but the bottom line is at the iSchool, we have essentially a 98, 99, 100%, almost 100% retention rate, right? So nobody leaves
Amazing.
us
Amazing.
because, yeah, because and let's also be honest, it's not just the job, but it's also the resources, right? And it's easy to say, but I've always said as a strategic planner, and again, I'm in no way the perfect leader either, but I focus on do you and do we know what it is you're supposed to do? And do you have robust resources to do your job so you don't have to worry about not having what you need, to do things well? And so I think that's part of it, right? And then the last thing I would say, which is highly controversial, Loida, is that for the most part, we are remote, right? So I can tell you that I'm talking to you here, not from my office, but from my home, right? And that's important because I've got my dog right here, right by my feet,
Oh,
right? And I don't have a 2 hour commute, right? And so there's something to be said about working in your personal space and having that flexibility, right? Because again, I recognize there's a lot of things that we lose by not having the face to face, but Lloyd, you're in New York, I'm in the Bay Area, the commute is brutal. Right. So not having to sit there for hours in traffic also is good for the mind. And so I think a lot of people said that's also why they love working for the iSchool because they can work from anywhere. Right. So,
I know. By the time we finish the commute, either here in New York or in the Bay Area, we
yeah.
are just ready to go home.
Yeah,
You walk the
exactly.
day. The
Yeah.
wellness is kind of out of the window. But I wanted to mention something that you mentioned too, kind of alluded to. We all have in our different industries all these projects, and we have goals, and there are priorities, and there are markers. Quarter one, quarter two, three, four. There are different things that we want to accomplish. And if we are also responding, if this is a corporation, right, we're also responding to the admin, we want to kind of meet some goals, but at what cost sometimes that's done, right? And I am just fortunate that I work with professionals and different type of workers that are very in terms of the wellness and well-being, that they are kind of very wellness minded people, but it is a constant sort of like a battle or a little bit of a struggle with ourselves, because like you said, right, if I sit down and close my eyes for a moment and have a pause, I think maybe I've been thinking, well, these are 10 or 15 minutes. I could, be answering some emails, clearing my inbox. But at what cost, right? Because then you have and this is backed by studies from the World Health Organization, the CDCs. hypertension, heart rate, problems with the heart, and other things that we don't, if we are eating at our desks, there are other things that can actually translate into fatigue. Fatigue is an actual medical condition. It's not only going upstairs and feeling, out of breath. So, there are things that we're going to be exploring more as we go in the different podcasts. And but I'm actually glad that you have mentioned a number of those. And before we wrap, what is the one final piece of advice that you will offer to our listeners, or if there are some of them, watching this video as well, who are leaders? They're also staff members. They are multitaskers because that's what we have these days. I'm a multitasker as well. And we're all trying to find a balance between the hustle and self-care. And like you said, we're not perfect. We're trying to, do the best we can. So what is this one or two pieces of advice you have for us?
Yeah, so I'll start off with again finding your happiness. And I don't mean that in an idealistic way, but in a very real way. Find things that make you happy. And I see that because to your point, Loida, there are always problems. There are always problems that we can't resolve right away. And to be honest, I think one of the things that has increased our anxiety is email, because email, you can have goals for a day, but your email may bring problems that you're not prepared to work on, right? And so
Yeah.
it just blows up your day, right? And so, and to be honest, for the leaders out there, this to be true. Those emails keep coming too, right? So you have to constantly be checking those emails. And it's before I became the director, Loida, I was always worried about the moniker of being a workaholic. But since I've become the director, I proudly say I'm a workaholic because my part of my job is to solve problems. And I check those emails and I answer those emails the best I can, sometimes slowly, but to try to solve problems, right? And that is one of our jobs. So I would start off with find your happiness because the stress and the anxiety is going to be there. And I think certainly for a lot of LIS professionals, the disruptive world that I'm hearing is making our patrons and customers a little bit grumpier too, right? So they're taking out some of their frustration on us, and so therefore this podcast load is very important because I think it's safe to say that again, the aggressiveness, the rudeness, the unsettledness of our society is being reflected in the patrons that we serve, which is then being thrown onto us. So our profession, all of us, but our profession, we must be even more strategic with our health and wellness. So happiness is number one, and I think the other, it goes back to your point of productive pauses. So I was thinking as you were saying that the way I do it, because I'm on the computer most of the time, is that my mind starts to get tired at times. And so what I will do is I'll turn on some really, upbeat music. I like Post Malone, and I'll start reading sports blogs, right? And I just kind of go off into my world. The music is there. I'm reading something not work related, and then I get back to work, right? My internal clock kind of tells me I feel guilty when I'm not working. And so those productive pauses later is pretty much, 10, 15 minutes, or, I had a tough meeting. I'm just going to take a 15-minute break, and then I get back into it. So I think that's the other one. You do have to take care of yourself. And then probably the third one, real quickly, will be to make sure that you really are taking care of yourself outside of work. And I mean, make sure that you are going to the dentist. Make sure you're going to the doctor. It's always, we never have enough time to do that, but it's a commitment to yourself. Because I have to say, sadly, I did lose my father last year unexpectedly. And so these things happen, is what I'm saying, right? And so we must take care of ourselves because these things can happen and will happen to all of us eventually, right? And so we must make sure we really do take care of ourselves and maintain our mental and physical health.
You said something that is so important. There are the World Health Organization and the CDCs both have mentioned that there is, and the United Nations, there is a mental health crisis in our world. And so our patrons at libraries, or customers and corporations, people working in tech industry, I mean, all across industries and disciplines, we are all part of this world, and we are unfortunately experiencing that. There was an old statistics that says that um, from every four people in the States, one was experiencing some type of mental health situation. And this doesn't mean that they need to be institutionalized. It means that maybe there is acute stress at certain times, or anxiety, or different things. There are a number of people that need to take medication, and there is such a stigma, and it should not be, because it helps people to operate in their daily lives. And what I'm saying is that what you mentioned earlier about librarians having to deal with maybe some type of, attack or pressures from outside, and sometimes even, internal, depending, is part of the historical times that we are living, and that the global health bodies actually have agreed on that. I want to stress that the United Nations declared there is a mental health priority, and that was coming from one of the reports they published 3 years ago, still prevalent. Unfortunately, we move forward, and there seems to be more man-made and more natural disasters. So we just working with that. But I like what you said about working at it, making sure that we have things in our life, or we create moments or times where we can be happy or experience some type of joy, right?
Have to. Exactly right. Yep, have to.
All right. Well, I hope our listeners can pull out some information from this, can also have conversations with their colleagues and with their administrators, people in the subway, people in the sidewalks, because this is how things start, conversations and trying to figure things out. But before we go, I would like to ask you, where can people learn more about your work, the different projects that you mentioned today, and maybe the wellness strategies that San Jose State University is working with? And I'm happy to share the link when we post the information of the podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Lloyd. So I think one will be I'm going to have to make sure I post this recording somewhere because I really haven't talked about health and wellness in most of my previous work. You can read more about me at anthonyeschal.com. I haven't updated that site in a little while, but that just gives you kind of my background, and then certainly from the iSchool. So ischool.sjsu.edu, you can read more about the different things that I'm working on. So yeah, so I'm really honored to be a guest on this podcast, Loida, and I did want to mention that I think going back to our original point, enjoy what you do. Enjoy what you do, because in the end, all of this conversation, and I think, Loida, you're the same way. We really enjoy helping other people and causing good for other people. And there's nothing better, here and here than to do that for other people. So I would end with that. Sometimes I think, Lloyd, people mistake health and wellness and happiness with I'm going to sit on the beach forever and drink Mai Tais, right? But I think the
That
bottom
could be
line is
part of it.
that could be part of it. And that certainly, I think, goes back to, I believe, the breaks, at least until we retire, right, Lloyd?
Right.
But the bottom line is, I think in the end, find your sweet spot, find something you really enjoy doing. And that, I believe, is really brings true happiness. And I do believe happiness and enjoying what you do, of course, is connected to health and wellness. So
That is words of wisdom. Thank you, Dr. Chow, and for joining us today.
thank you,
It's
Lloyd.
been an insightful conversation, and I truly hope that people can then build on this and share with your colleagues. We are sure our listeners will have an actionable strategies to recharge and come back stronger. Just listen to your body as well, as part of what we said today. And to our audience, don't forget to subscribe and tune in the next time for more Wellness Inside. Thank you.
Thank you, Loida.
Okay, great. We still have about 9 minutes, but it's good because then I'll add an intro and so cut this. So thank you so much. But send me the specific links you want me to share, and I'm happy
Sure.
to post them whenever this comes out on the 30th. All right,
Sure.
thank you.
Yeah. Good to see you, Loida. Thanks
Okay,
again. All
bye.
right.